Joining us is a whistleblower. The article is Media Whitewashes Olympic Security Scandal, Revelations about Casket Liners, Plan for Evacuation of London, Blacklisted. We'll just call him Lee, but he's an investigative journalist. He first brought this story to the national media. They didn't want to cover it and said that there's a blackout. They've since, he came out on, did get on news radio in England with Tony Gosling, who has his own show, Bilderberg.org, who's a great journalist. Once he was able to go on that show, there's now been some whitewashing about, oh, there are some stuff happening. But basically, it's designed to fail. And just like we broke the plan for martial law in Chicago and evacuation, if there was an attack, later it was confirmed in the Chicago Tribune and Washington Post for NATO, that's basically what's happening here. It's a standard program. And he'll just go by Lee. The article, again, is Media Whitewashes Olympic Security Scandal. The original article was, Whistleblower Reveals Plan to Evacuate London During Olympics. And Lee joins us now. I really appreciate you coming on today, Lee. You've got the floor. Tell us here today.
Well, firstly, Alex, it's absolutely my pleasure being here. I first went into G4S because I was concerned about how they were training people, and I'd heard some stories. And of course, you can't just listen to what people say. You have to get in there and find out for yourself. So I did. So I went to a training centre. I signed myself up to be an Olympic security officer. I already had a security industry authority licence from a previous investigation I'd already done. And by the end of the day, after a brief interview, and when I say brief interview, they basically said, what's your name? I told them. They said, here's 3 cups. Can you tell the difference between orange juice, water, and thin air? There was nothing in the 3rd cup. I said, absolutely. That's orange juice, that's water, that's thin air. And they went, right, you're in. And a few weeks later, I was given my first training assignment, where I had to turn back up at the school again. And basically, they started showing me a PowerPoint presentation of what a security guard does for the Olympics. And I was assigned to work in a pedestrian screening area. Well, I am assigned to work in a pedestrian screening area, which is why I'm going by another name, obviously to hide my identity so I don't get kicked out. And so the security training is so inadequate for these people that they're dragging the job centres for everybody. So if you're long-term unemployed in London and you live in an Olympic borough, you have no choice but to go down to the Olympics. So most of these people don't even want to be there. They tried to deal drugs to me while I was in my classroom. Someone came up to me and actually said, do you want to buy some marijuana? It was. He opened the package up, and there it was. And it had that very...
All right, let me just stop you for a minute here, Lee. Your phone's a little overdriven, a little muffled. Can you back off of it a little bit?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. How's that?
Yeah, back off a little more. Go ahead and start back over with the marijuana. What was happening there?
Oh, well, I was approached in one of my classes and by a student, and he offered to sell me marijuana in the classroom. This is a student training to be an Olympic security officer. Later on, one of the training officers who was actually training us saw him doing it to someone else, and he turned to him and said, here, mate, can you do that outside? Wait till the break. He actually said that. He didn't kick him out. He didn't phone the police. He didn't do anything. He just said, you wait for a bit later so you can do that in a break. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And it goes on from there, really.
Tell us about yourself as an investigative journalist, why you got this idea, basically how you signed up, and why you're going public with this information. Because obviously, it's all a bunch of security theater, as we've learned with the TSA, where they wantonly are hiring criminals.
Yeah. I mean, as an investigative journalist, I'm a filmmaker and an investigative journalist. I used to work on a program here in the UK called The Cook Report, which was, I suppose, the last great independent investigative journalist program that there was in this country, until we did a story called Cash for Questions, which was about 30 politicians taking bribes, and the company was bought out by a big American corporation, Carbon Communications. They came in, they swooped down, they shut us down, and that was the end of that. So we all went freelance. And ever since then, I don't want to be too specific in what I've worked on, because obviously that will give me away as well. I've been a freelance investigative journalist, and I make documentary films and what have you. And I've worked for all the major broadcasters, as well as doing independent stuff for myself. the Olympics. This is the biggest event this country is ever going to see, and I don't want it basically ruined by an organisation that when they got the job to do the security, they received £86 million contract. And within a couple of years, they've bumped that up to £284 million. I don't understand where the money's going. So I went, okay, I don't get this. I'm going to go and join the security team, and we'll find out exactly what they're like.
Why do you think they're doing this? I mean, they claim there's such a big terror threat. Why do they want the most flimsy security possible? Tell us about who's involved. I know Watson's article was reporting that it's mainly foreigners who were to be the security people.
Yeah, that's predominantly true. They are. There's a lot of Nigerians, a lot of Asians who are basically the local populace of the areas, the Olympic boroughs. They're very black heavy and Asian areas of London, and they're getting them to basically work. They hadn't done a day's work of security in their life. They're having to put them through their Security Industry Authority license. They have to be licensed before you do any kind of security work in the UK. And so the Olympic Authority are paying for everybody to have their SIA licenses. And these people are being rushed through this program. It's not a hard program, but it's a proper test. I did it. I actually found it. You had to revise for it. There's none of that going on. They sit there for a couple of days and they get the license, which is a joke in itself, really. And then they're on to doing security training. And the reason that this is happening is that they want the worst security there, because obviously, as far as I can see, if something happens, a terrorist gets in, they can blame it on the security. And G4S, being the biggest security company in the world, so they claim, will basically blame this local indigenous population who they couldn't train or untrainable or whatever excuse they'll come up with at the time. I'm used to doing false flag operations as part of investigative journalism that I've done previously. And I proved, without a shadow of a doubt, because I talked to British agents and their handlers, between collusion between the IRA and the British government. And in fact, one of the British agents said to me, there are more British soldiers in the IRA than there are Irish people in the IRA.
I've had members, British commandos on who were killed after they were on the show. I've had people like Steak Knife on. That got forced out by alternative journalists, but was later, for those that don't know, in the London Guardian and the other big papers, that the entire leadership cell was not infiltrated, but was run by British intelligence, and they would do violent things if they couldn't get IRA members to carry out attacks.
That's right, yeah. And, from Jerry Adams, Mike McGuinness, Steak Knife, there's another guy, Kevin Fulton. These people are all British agents, and so I've done this kind of work before. And this agent, Kevin Fulton, had trained with the FBI, had come back over, went to Ireland, and was teaching other IRA members how to make bombs that go off with the camera flash and infrared flash. So I know all about false flag operations. And this, to me, feels like the same thing. They're putting in a level of security that is inadequate. I'm telling you that now. I was at the training facility a couple of weeks ago, and people didn't know how to search a bag. They were standing there, and it was like a little test. I was standing next to one of the trainers, and the guy was going through, trying to search a bag, and he was just basically staring at it, touching it with his hands. And the trainer said, "It's all right, mate. I know what you mean." And I laughed, and I looked at him and said, "I'm glad you do. Can you explain it to me?" What was he doing? And the trainer just said to me, "Move on. Don't ask." And I was like, right. When I've asked questions about how the training's going, what sort of things we'll be doing, all I've been told is, be the robot. Exactly those words I'm quoting. A trainer said to me, be the robot. Because I was worried because we were having to wear our uniforms, our security uniforms, from the Olympic venue back to our homes and then back to, obviously, to work the next day. And I said, well, hold on a minute. This is a security risk. Policemen don't do that. Soldiers don't do that. Why are we expected to do that? I care about my family. I don't want them held hostage while I have to let someone through a gate or not search them properly, to get them into the stadium. That in itself is a security risk. And the guy just says to me, don't worry about it, mate. Just be the robot. You know, this is crazy stuff that's going on down here at the moment. We've also got these troops that are coming into London, and in actual fact, they're helicoptering them in under the cover of night time. If you live in Greenwich or in southeast London near Woolwich Barracks, you will hear Chinook helicopters going backwards and forwards all night long, and that's them busing in these troops. And a British Army major, who's a doctor there, told me that he's got to look after 100,000 troops as they come through Woolwich Barracks, and then they moved on to other barracks in and around London. And he said he's seeing a lot of Americans, and he's seeing a lot of Germans, and a lot of other nationalities. And I said, what are these UN troops? And he said, yeah, I think so.
So let's be clear, you're an investigative journalist, been part of these TV shows, all of this. Tony Gosling says he can vouch for you. He's a great journalist as well. And you've covered false flag. That's on record. That these events have gone on. And now you're saying you're seeing all the telltale signs of false flag being prepared and more. They're bringing in to station all over London 100,000 troops, I guess using this really as an I-4 NATO/UN invasion cover, because I've noticed they use these drills as pretext for another mission in the future. So I'm not saying that the UN's invading now. The point is, this is just to acclimate everyone and get everybody prepared for it in the future. He told you 100,000 troops. Where are they stationing them? Where are they bivouacking them?
Well, they're coming into, by Chinook, into Woolwich Barracks. They're going through a medical procedure there and an orientation procedure, and then they're getting moved out. And I assume they're coming in batches of 100 or 120, 150. These helicopter flights are going on all the time throughout the night. I mean, it's the fact that they're doing that at night and not in the daytime, which is suspicious anyway. I don't like things done under the cover of darkness, especially when armies and governments are involved. And then they're putting them out to barracks all around London, and they're just sitting there and they're just waiting there. And basically, as someone said to me the other day, they said, well, hold on a minute, what are these 100,000 troops are going to be for? And I was told, as training at G4S, that we were going to be involved in and I'm quoting now, so I'm going to get it absolutely right, a defining moment in the history of London. This is not talking about the Olympics. They were talking about an event after the Olympics, and they said it would be a defining moment in the history of London. Now
give folks the date of the Olympics over there.
Sorry?
What's the exact date again of the Olympics?
I think it's the 27th of July, isn't it? And it runs up until mid-September. Because
I've talked to police, and they've been told, be ready for martial law by September/October. Yeah. I've talked to police in Austin, Texas. I've talked to police in Dallas, St. Louis, Washington, D.C., and San Francisco, all saying the same thing. That doesn't mean they'll pull the trigger, but they're telling these guys, high level, this is going to happen. They've already federalized, in these rapid response teams, local police, key units, and they're getting ready for a global meltdown, and I think they could use the Olympics. You know, back at the Munich Olympics, they have one day in September. It's narrated by Michael Douglas. And at the end of it, they have the former head of German intelligence admit the whole thing had been staged and was fake, and that they'd staged a hijacking. And I went to and this thing won an Academy Award. Yeah. And as an afterthought, they admit they staged that at the Olympics. I forget, what year was that at the German Olympics where that happened in Munich?
Oh, it was Munich, German Olympics.
I'm going to look up Munich terror attack, Munich, 1972. And again, just at the end of the movie, the former head of German intelligence laughs and says, but you know, the whole thing was staged, and we staged the hijacking, and we ran the terrorist. They ran the terrorists commanding the minions they sent who didn't even know. Can you believe the magnitude of that evil?
Yeah, and you know, and I think they're gearing up to do things like that again, because, you know, as a G4S security officer, I'm going to be involved in apparently the evacuation of London, or a possible evacuation of London. That's exactly what they've told us. They actually spent quite a lot of time talking about the evacuation of London and this defining moment in the history of London, more so really than they told us about how to search someone and actually the mechanics of, you know, being a security officer. This keen on getting this information into us, that after the Olympics, we would be involved in something. Now, they weren't going to say what it was, obviously, because you want to need to know, but we were going to be involved in this evacuation of London. And a friend of mine said to me, he says, well, how would you evacuate London?
All right, let me stop you because, again, this is so bombshell. It's not that they're just planning for a contingency. They're saying this is going to happen.
They're saying that we, as security officers, are going to be involved in the evacuation of London. That's what I've got. That's my quote. That's what's written down. It's not a possible evacuation. I've said that. I said, well, maybe it's a possible evacuation because this sounds crazy. But actually, they're talking about, they said, you're going to be involved in the evacuation of London and you will be dealing with members of the public.
Okay, I've talked to Gosling, journalist there in England, radio show there in the country. Great scoops he gives us routinely. He's one of the guys that really discovered where Bilderberg would be first this year. He can vouch for you. You sound credible, but if you are credible, and this follows the paradigm, we've gotten a lot of leaks that this is coming already. If this is credible, buddy, you better come out quick with who you are. I know you want to keep going in and getting intel, but they're going to discover who you are, and you could end up, I mean, they've killed people involved in the Rupert Murdoch investigation, for heaven's sakes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, stay there. I mean, you know how many people they killed who were in British intelligence, who had a conscience and went public how they were really running the IRA. This is hardcore. Stay there, sir. We'll be right back. Wow. Wow. Now, there are hundreds of great products at InfoWarsTeam.com, but I want to point out the 3 that have helped me lose 37 pounds in just 2 months. Products like Beyond Tangy Tangerine, Pollen Burst, and Rebound. When I started taking the Tangy Tangerine and other products every day, I lost more than 37 pounds in just 2 months. Now that's results. I want to challenge my listeners to go to InfoWarsTeam.com and to order just 3 of their products, and you will see the changes in the way you look, feel, and in your appetite almost immediately. Start your journey to health and wellness today. InfoWarsTeam.com. You know, I wish that this story wasn't credible in my mind for this investigative journalist who we'll just call Lee. But I've seen it over and over again. I mean, 7/7 was a government event. You can go look up the research on it, run by MI6. Even came out, they had a former high-level FBI counterterrorism guy, John Loftus, went on Fox News and exposed it. And it was in the British papers. But it's like, okay, the head of the bombings, MI6, they set up some guys in a drill. Some of them figured it out and ran, got killed. This guy's got a lot of courage we're talking to. Lee, you've worked these IRA cases being staged by British intelligence with the FBI and others. You know a bunch of those guys got killed, including investigative journalist. I mean, you've got a lot of courage. Why are you doing this?
Because, well, A, it's in the public interest to know these things. Because if you don't know what's going on, then you can't defend against anything. If you know that the security is lax, that you know that they're actually going to turn off the walk-through metal detectors at peak times to get people into the stadium. There won't be any metal detectors on going into that stadium, and someone could basically walk through with a bomb, and you're not going to know because it's not going to ping because it's not going to be on. People need to know this. It's if you've got tickets and going to the Olympics, or if you're working at the Olympics, you need to know, and that's what whistleblowing is all about. You come out and you say, hey, look, this is in the public interest. I'm not doing this to be a hero. In fact, actually, I'm endangering my life by telling you this. But it's in the public interest for people to know these facts, and that's why I do it. Because, you know, I care about people. I care about people in my country and from around the world, and I don't want to see anything happen to them at the London Olympics or for any other event or on the tube or anything.
What do you think the defining moment could be? A terror attack, a bioweapon released, and then the troops appear from NATO and UN to save everyone, and, oh, we learn how great it is to be occupied? Because I know they've done those drills here, NLEO 9, NLEO 10, NLEO 11. People can look those up. I mean, what do you think's happening? What are they planning to do with 100,000 troops?
You know, I really don't know. However, what I've sort of been speculating on is the fact that what would make people want to leave London? And basically, it's going to be a bioweapon of some kind. You know, if a bomb goes off at the stadium, yeah, it needs to be, you quite a large bomb or anything, but it won't be a nuclear bomb or anything like that. It will be a bomb, and it will just go off one of these probably high-velocity air bombs that they've got now, and they'll say it's a biological weapon, and it won't be. They'll just say it. And then the troops will come in, and people will want to leave London. People will be trying to desperately getting out.
Well, number one, I mean, I don't get scared of big crowds, but I don't like it. I mean, I remember being a kid at a Dallas Cowboys game and going, man, what happened if something just instinctively, a child, I couldn't put my finger on it, but now I know, instinctively, if there's a stampede, a fire, whatever, it's a death trap. And this will have to be investigated, obviously, further. I hope your story is inaccurate, but from credible sources, they say you're credible, and this fits the MO. It's all theater to begin with. Now, could the supervisor have been mistaken about what he was told? How many people told you that there will be this big defining event?
Well, 2 trainers were in the room at any one time. There's one trainer giving a presentation and another trainer basically sitting in the corner and checking what they say. And
so this is standard training, is that a big defining moment's coming up?
That's right. 800 people a day have gone through that training centre. And every 800 people that go through have been told this.
And so the rest of the story is the media needs to go vet your story, but they won't, telling us it's probably true. We'll be right back. All right, I'm coming down off of the blood-pumping, headache-inducing anger over the global crime syndicate and its private collection agency with the private Federal Reserve, the IRS, quasi-government, running my health care and grabbing money out of my bank account, being upheld by the Supreme Court after the sucker punch of saying it wouldn't be. We knew that was a fraud. Hospital stocks soar on Supreme Court's ruling to uphold Obama's signature health care law. I had a moron call in earlier and say the insurance companies didn't write it when they're on record bragging the head of their lobby. All over the news saying, I mean, it's just these poor little mainline liberals are like little children. They just have no idea. And now the Supreme Court says it's a tax to the private insurance companies. I mean, just... And they just can't understand that. They just can't get it's a big scam and they're a schmuck. Let's go to Lee, investigative journalist. I'll just leave it at that. The articles are up at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. I obviously want to get you back up on the nightly news sometime next week as we get closer to all of this. The rest of the story is that you've tried to already get this to national media, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a contact at Channel 4 News, who I regularly work with, and this story was actually originally going to go out through him, and he basically told me, he said, there's a blackout on this story, we're not doing it. And I said, oh. So I tried my other contacts, the other major media, and they said, we're not going to do anything that's going to go against the Olympics. And I was like, well, how do I get this story out? And the fabulous Tony Gosling said, he invited me onto his show, so we could break the story that way. I couldn't even get it into a paper, or anything like that. So that's why I turned to Tony Gosling, and he's great, and his show was amazing. We've had an amazing response from it.
Well, we need to get this out to people because I've never had so much chatter and sources that won't name themselves for a couple months saying, watch the Olympics, something's big is going to happen. And we know it. We know the Germans would stage the deal at the Olympics in '72. I mean, that's admitted in One Day in September, Academy Award-winning documentary. And again, the whole movie is about Islamic terrorists and everything. And at the end, they admit, by the way, we staged it with them.
Hello?
Yes, are you there?
Yes, no, I'm here. Yeah, great. Sorry, I thought you'd gone then.
No. I'm just marveling that they may go ahead with this even though you've exposed it. That's how dumb they think we are.
Well, yeah, and, one of the reasons why, I wanted to expose it was to hopefully to say, hey, look, we know something's wrong. We don't know exactly what you're going to do, but you're going to do something and hopefully expose this so that they change their plans and do nothing. That's my hope. I mean, there's 4 weeks to go, and I'm trying to get this everywhere I possibly can. I mean, one example was that they were faking the bomb checks in the stadium for the past 3 years, and that came out the other day in a newspaper here. And a couple of guys from G4S got sacked, but But, you know, it hasn't gone any higher than that. They said, oh, well, you know, it's these guys' fault. If you're faking the bomb checks in the stadium for the past 3 years, you put your name to it, that is fraud. And that needs to be a criminal investigation. But, of course, no one investigates G4S. They're actually above the law, and that's what worries me.
I want to set you up for the nightly news with an in-depth commercial-free interview, Lee. Thank you so much. We'll be in contact today, and thank you for all the work you're doing, and I look forward down the road. Hopefully at some time you can reveal your identity after you've been employed there. Are you planning to do that?
Yes, absolutely, sir. I will do that. It's the big reveal.
All right, well, we'll do that in the aftermath, and hopefully we can avert this false flag. We have a special guest coming up to give us his medical take on what's happening with government-run healthcare straight ahead. And I've got CBS News is going to be here to interview me. And not a good day to interview me, probably. Visit Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.